Digitally. We're back today with JoAnn Stonier, who you will recall joined us recently on an episode to talk about chief data officers, data as a new asset class, and the go-forward view of business ahead. Today, we want to bring her back because we want to explore an area we didn't get a chance to touch upon yet, which is everything about governance, about privacy, about policies that relates to data. You'll recall from last conversation, JoAnn is the chief data officer for Mastercard, and she is and serves on the United Nations Expert Group on Governance and Artificial Intelligence. She's also the co-chair of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Data Policy. With that, JoAnn, welcome back.
Thanks, Sanjay. It's a pleasure to be here, really.
It's great to have you here. It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining. JoAnn, I'm just going to jump right into the topic I know we want to spend time on, which is the foundations that we need to be building today to be able to ensure that we're able to leverage data in the world to come. You teased us with that at the end of the previous episode. I want to come back and start from there. Tell us what that means. How does that translate into things you do in your day-to-day life?
Well, sure. I mean, you started in your introduction talking about kind of this idea of governance and policy, and I think that those are such big words, and then I think about what we do at a very practical level at Mastercard. And maybe I can try to pull all of this together, right? So when I think about innovation with data, it's so exciting, right? We have such a wonderful world of so many different opportunities in every organization, right? That's using data today to inform new insights, to form new products, to create new solutions, right? To problems that we've all been struggling with, right? If I think about COVID times, right? We know that the ability to sift through larger and larger volumes of data with newer and newer tools has enabled the creation of new solutions faster and faster. And we look at the vaccines, we look at the new medication for COVID, all of that has been enabled by looking at more data faster, right? And so that's terrific, but it also requires governance. And governance is always like, oh, that sounds like boring and it sounds like compliance. But the way
it feels like friction, and it
does, right? And it feels like it's going to slow you down.
Right.
But at the same time, the way we think about it oftentimes at Mastercard is that these are your design constrictions, right? So we have law, we have contracts with certain customers, but we also have at Mastercard, we have our data responsibility principles, because we want to create a future world in which, quite frankly, all of us want to live. And we want to keep people at the center of our design. Even though we're really a B2B2C company, we recognize that all of our products, all of our solutions eventually will impact a person, right? So when we do a fraud analysis, it's going to be applied to a person. Same thing for security, right? Even when we do econometric analysis, oftentimes our customers are going to apply it to a data set that's individualized, right? Even if that's a government, they're going to apply it to their city, their town, their village, right? They're going to use it to maybe decide where to put a school or where to build a hospital, right? All of that is going to impact somebody, some community. So if all of that's important, well, then making sure the data is right for the analysis is super important. And so navigating, balancing risk, data risk, with data utility is also super important, right? So everybody wants to use the data, but is it the right data for the right purpose and of the right quality is really important. So we have a governance process where our data analysts, right, and our data scientists work together to come up with a query and figure out, okay, what do we want to solve? And then together with data designers and folks in our data quality teams, we actually look at the data sources and make sure it's the right data for the inquiry. And we kind of go back and forth. It's kind of like a tennis match, right? Because what we want to see, is this the best data? Should we be adding other data sets? Or is it actually the wrong data? Is it missing something? And we talk about bias in data, but right, is the data actually not right and going to lead us to the wrong answer? And so we have a whole practical application by each set of context or circumstances, we call that by data domain, that we go through this process so that by each use case for each context or domain, we do this in a very, very specific way. So we can set up what the risk factors are based on how impactful it's going to be to individuals all the way down the line. And I think that type of governance is super important to get to the right implications for whatever the purpose is that you're doing, whether that's fraud, whether that's security, whether that's for the next banking application, whether that's for the an econometrics kind of exercise, or any other type of new product based on whatever you want to invent at the time. So that's what we do.
I love that. I love the phrase data responsibility. I think it's one that we're going to start seeing more and more come out in annual statements and other corporate communications for for public interest. And I absolutely agree with you, JoAnn, that there's one half of data responsibility around the hygiene of data. Are you looking at the right data? Is it of the right quality? Does it cover all the gaps that you need? Are you using for the right intention? And a lot of that, I think you captured under the governance associated with the hygiene of the data. But is there a second half, which isn't as much the hygiene of what you do, but the policy of what you do, right? So in the context of, we're going to use data for the betterment of the individual from whom we got the data in the first place. How do we stay true to that? And obviously that's the frontier of public policy and all of the discussion we're seeing happen. You know, you're at the forefront of that discussion. You and I spend time talking about data that you own, data that you transmit, data that you send through. You know, how do you think about responsibility on data in the context of protecting the originator from whom the data came? Talk to us a little bit about that half of the equation.
Oh, absolutely. So we think, first of all, that you own your own data, okay? Even though we may have been a custodian of it or a steward of that data as it passes through Mastercard, right? I think you, Sanjay, believe you own Sanjay better than I do, right? Or that I own JoAnn better than you do, right? That's kind of at base. So we have these very basic tenets around individuals, right? Individuals own their own data. They should have the right to control their own data, that they should understand the benefits they're getting from anybody using it. And of course, they should have the right to security of that data and privacy. So those are our guiding stars. Then on our behalf, we say, and for us, as we use data, we want to make sure the data is accurate, that we're transparent on what we're doing with the data, that we're going to have integrity with the data, right? So that means that we are going to be clear when we're using AI or machine learning, we're going to understand all of the ramifications of what we're doing. We also are going to do what you're saying. We're going to be open and honest. We're going to innovate with data, and we'll let you know what we're doing, and we'll try to tell you all the steps that we can. That we're also going to try to innovate for social impact, positive social impact. And that for all of those things, every step of the way, we will keep data secure, we will keep data private. We really don't do anything at an individualized level, except maybe for fraud, where we kind of have to figure out that it's on your card because you kind of want us to. But almost everything else that we do, we really are doing at the level of trying to understand populations of data. Now, we are pushing into new areas, and we recognize for things like we're trying to begin to be a network that it navigates digital identity. Well, by its very nature, we have to know it's you. But what we're doing is we're trying to validate that it's you. So it's an extension of that safety and security aspect, right? So that you can actually have your data validated, and it's another method of security. So those are the things that we're committed to. And I think in that way, by having that kind of codified, it's a baseline rubric for everything that we're doing. And we're thinking about, you know, there's other principles that we'll add as we continue to innovate. But the way we work is there's these principles, then there's practice, and that practice includes governance, right? And it goes all the way through into the actual product creation in our what we call our studio process, which is really how we innovate, all the way through to implementation, where we monitor our products and solutions and see, well, is it time for a refresh? So I think all of those things are really, really important for any organization to be responsible with the data that they are using.
I love the way you framed it, JoAnn, because I think what you're saying, you know, look, many of us might think about data as this gobbledygook of this gooey, big, large mass of things. And I think what you're doing is you're saying, listen, you got to segment it out. There's data, and then you have to think about, do you own the data? Are you the steward of data? Are you the user of data? Are you just the transmitter of data? And then as you figure out the role and responsibility, then you think through the principles and the practices that come to be able to address the core governance aspects of it. And if you break the problem into its parts, then you apply a more structured approach to it, I can quickly see, and I think this is where you're leading us, you know, how you get to more responsible data use. And I think that is fantastic. I'm gonna take you in one more direction before I let you go, JoAnn.
Sure.
That's in the data department. That's the role of the CDO. That's what's happening in the data, in the group of people that are responsible for the data strategy for the company. But then how do other disciplines change in the company to be able to both take advantage and also play into this responsible data strategy that you laid out for us?
So it's really interesting. When we launched our principles back in 2018, we really thought, okay, they're going to think there are principals, the chief data officer and my team, right? Or maybe they'll think it's also maybe the privacy team, maybe the security team, and they'll give them to us and say, God love you. Instead, what we found is that it gave our sales team a way to talk about our products. It gave our product development team a way to talk about our products. It actually gave us all a common language to talk about what mattered around the data embedded in our products and solutions. And so we now have a language to actually talk to each other, talk to our customers, talk to our clients about our data practices. And it enables them to ask questions, right? And again, we're a B2B2C company, so other organizations want to know. And as regulation changes, right? And as things evolve, transparency is one of our principles. So it really makes it easier for us to say, well, this is what we've done, and these are the decisions we've made, and this is why. And because we now have this easier language, it enables all of our employees to actually be part of that conversation. Now, of course, my team is going to be the deepest expert, right? So if it's the really tough question, it comes to us. But it does mean that our entire organization is much more data literate and data aware than we might have been if we hadn't started down this path.
I love the conversation with you, JoAnn. Every time I talk to you, I walk away with new nuggets. I think the bit you said about just getting clarity about what is your role relative to the data, and then actually thinking the principles that apply, and then applying that to, and then taking it to the practices that you put into place, but not stopping there, taking it to the rest of the organization and figuring out the common platform of communication and getting everyone on the same page so you're clear, you're transparent, and you're governing this correctly. I love it. I love it. JoAnn, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.